The moon's oath. The moon hung like a bleeding eye over the blackened towers of Ebonvale. Wind whispered through the ruins of an age-old cathedral, carrying the faint sound of a vow that was never meant to be heard by mortal ears. Caroline stood before the altar, her white gown trembling against her skin, her breath sharp and shallow. The scent of old incense clung to the air, mixed with something colder. Blood. It wasn't hers. Leon Varcrest stood across from her, his crimson eyes catching the moonlight like glass shards. The vampire lord of Ebonvale, beautiful, dangerous, and infinitely still. His voice, when it came, was smooth as silk yet heavy with something ancient. By moon and blood, by silence and fire, I claim what is mine. Caroline's pulse raced. She didn't understand what she had agreed to. The marriage contract, sealed by her dying father, had been written in symbols she could not read. All she knew was that her life was no longer her own. A blade glinted between them. Ceremonial, obsidian, curved like a crescent. Leon drew it across his palm, dark crimson pooling in his hand. Then, with quiet inevitability, he reached for her. His blood touched her lips. The world shifted. She gasped, eyes wide, as cold fire surged through her veins. Every heartbeat became a thunderclap, every breath a cry. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard the church bells ring, but no one had rung them in centuries. The vow echoed through her as her body trembled. The moonlight dimmed, and when she opened her eyes again, she saw him kneeling before her. Not as a lord, but as something else. Something bound. Now, he murmured, voice echoing within her skull. We are one. Outside, thunder rolled. The first storm in 50 years broke over Ebonvale that night, and in the shadows of the ruined cathedral, a new oath was born, one that would twist destiny, love, and damnation into the same chain. The moon's oath had been made, and the heavens, for a moment, turned red. Chapter 1, The Bride in Chains. Caroline wakes with a start. The world is made of velvet shadows and flickering candlelight. She lies upon a grand bed framed by black iron vines. Her wrists ache. When she lifts them, she finds a faint mark of silver manacles that have been removed, but their ghost still lingers. She's no longer in her village. No longer human. Not entirely. Ebonvale Castle looms around her, silent and endless. Walls made of midnight stone. Curtains that shimmer like smoke. The air carries the weight of centuries, of promises and sins that refuse to die. She remembers the altar, the vow, the taste of blood, and the man, Leon Varcrest. The name rolls through her mind like thunder through distant hills. Even now, she can feel the pull toward him, like an invisible thread tugging at the edges of her soul. She hates it, fears it, yet it calls to her. She steps to the mirror, fingers trembling as they brush her throat. Her reflection stares back, pale and ethereal. The mark at her collarbone, a faint sigil glowing beneath her skin, burns faintly in the moonlight. It's the seal of the bond, his claim. Outside the tall window, the forests of Ebonvale stretch into forever. The moon paints everything in silver. Somewhere wolves howl, a dirge of mourning and hunger. Then the door creaks open. Leon stands in the doorway, tall and shadowed. His coat glimmers faintly with rain. His gaze meets hers, unreadable but piercing. You're awake, he says softly. Good. Caroline takes a step back, voice trembling. What have you done to me? Leon's expression remains calm, almost regretful. What was required? You were dying. Now you live. I didn't ask to live this way. No, he replies, and there's a trace of something dangerous, something wounded, in his tone. But neither did I. The conversation dies like a dying ember. He turns, his cloak sweeping the floor as he moves to leave. Yet before he vanishes into the hall, he stops. You'll find your strength returning by nightfall, he says without looking back. The bond ensures it. But remember this, Caroline, Ebonvale is not kind to those who wander uninvited. The door closes. Silence claims the room again. Caroline sinks onto the bed, heart pounding. She doesn't know whether to scream or cry. The world she knew is gone. The future is written in blood. And somewhere deep in her chest, something unfamiliar stirs. something ancient and restless. The bond pulses once beneath her skin, and she realizes with dread that she can still feel his heartbeat. Far away, in the upper tower, Leon stands by the window, watching the same moon that watches her. His eyes close, his voice, barely a whisper, echoes the bond neither of them can break. Forgive me. The castle breathes with them both, two souls caught between salvation and damnation. The bride in chains has awakened. Chapter 2, The Lord of Shadows. The night in Ebonvale stretches like eternity. Rain falls in thin, whispering threads, tracing the ancient gargoyles that guard the castle walls. Leon walks the halls in silence. His steps are measured, deliberate, but his mind is chaos. It has been centuries since he performed the blood oath, since he dared to bind a mortal life to his own. Yet Caroline's blood had sung to him, wild, defiant, alive. He tells himself he did it to save her, that the ritual was mercy. But deep down, he knows mercy had nothing to do with it. She reminds him of someone long dead, someone he swore he'd never love again. In the West Wing, the portraits of his ancestors hang beneath the candlelight, eyes of old vampires, cold and watchful. One frame stands empty, its glass shattered. Beneath it, an inscription carved in old tongue. To love a mortal is to court ruin. Leon stops before it. The words burn. He closes his eyes, remembering the night the prophecy was spoken. The oracle of the dead had whispered it in his youth. The moon will bleed, the chains will break, and the heart you bind will end you. He thought it myth, until now. Meanwhile, Caroline explores the lower halls. Each corridor whispers secrets of centuries. Her mortal senses feel sharper now. Every candle flicker hums. Every heartbeat echoes like a drum. She hears distant voices, servants of shadow, whispering her name. When she enters the ballroom, her breath catches. Chandeliers hang like frozen stars. The marble floor mirrors a reflection, pale and ghost-like. For a moment, she could almost imagine herself in a dream. But dreams don't breathe cold down your neck. She turns and finds Leon watching from the balcony above, his expression unreadable, his presence undeniable. "You shouldn't be here," he says. She stiffens. "Why? Am I not allowed to walk in my own prison?" He descends the stairs slowly, the sound of his boots echoing, because Ebonvale remembers, and it does not forgive trespassers. Their eyes meet, hers blazing with defiance, his shadowed by longing he cannot admit. For a moment, time halts. Two fates intertwined by blood and choice stand inches apart, both unwilling to surrender, both already lost. Outside, thunder crashes. The moon turns red again. And far beneath the castle, something ancient stirs, something that remembers the last time a mortal bride entered Ebonvale. The storm has only begun. Chapter 3, The Whispering Halls. The next night came quietly, veiled in mist. The castle slept, yet its walls hummed with secrets. Every corridor in Ebonvale seemed alive, whispering Caroline as she moved through it, guided only by the faint glow of her bond mark. She could hear them now, faint voices rising and falling like wind. Some sounded mournful, others warning. But one voice stood above the rest, soft, melodic, and eerily familiar. "Caroline." She froze. The whisper came from the east corridor, the one lined with statues of forgotten saints. Each figure held a broken weapon or wilted flower, their marble eyes weeping streaks of dust. As she walked, their shadows lengthened, reaching for her like pleading hands. Her breath trembled. Who's there? No answer, only the echo of her own heartbeat. And then, suddenly, a chill hand brushed her arm. She gasped, spinning around, but found no one. Only the whisper remained. "Don't trust the Lord of Shadows." Far above, Leon stood in his study, watching her through the mirror glass. The bond allowed him glimpses, brief flashes of her movements, her emotions bleeding faintly into his own. Fear, defiance, curiosity. They struck him like the rhythm of a pulse he no longer had. He closed his eyes. The castle shouldn't be speaking yet, he thought. It only awakens when it senses imbalance. And imbalance was exactly what she had brought. The magic that kept Ebonvale sealed, the curse that had chained it in endless night, was beginning to stir. Her presence, her blood, her defiance, it was undoing something ancient. Caroline reached a set of tall wooden doors, half rotten with age. The whispers grew frantic now, circling her like a storm. Her trembling hand reached for the handle. The doors creaked open. Inside was a great chamber, an abandoned library. Dust blanketed the shelves, but the books pulsed faintly with light. One lay open on the table, its pages fluttering though there was no wind. Caroline stepped closer. The words were written in old tongue, yet she could understand them. Her bond with Leon translated the forbidden language. The first bride will awaken the curse. Her heart will call the moon. Her blood will unbind the Lord. She staggered back. No! Her reflection shimmered on the book's surface, her eyes glowing faintly red for just a moment. She stumbled, clutching her chest. The mark burned, fierce and bright. And then she saw him. Leon stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his voice quiet but sharp. You shouldn't be here. Her pulse raced. You knew about this, didn't you? About what I am. He stepped closer. You are what I made you. Her eyes filled with tears. Then unmake me. Leon hesitated. Pain flickered in his gaze. Brief, human. If I could, he whispered, I would. Outside, the winds howled to the stone towers. The castle moaned as if alive, and the whispers rose once more. The curse had been touched. In that moment, both knew the bond between them was no longer simply a mark. It was destiny reawakening. And somewhere deep within Ebonvale, something ancient smiled. Chapter 4, The Feast of Shadows. Days passed, though in Ebonvale, the days were made of moonlight. Servants of shadow moved through the halls, preparing for something grand. Caroline watched from her chamber window as tables were laid in the great hall, silverware gleaming, dark roses woven through candelabras. Every movement was precise, reverent. It felt less like a feast and more like a ritual. When Leon came to her that night, he wore his ceremonial black, high collar, crimson trim, a sigil burning faintly over his heart. You will attend the feast, he said. It's tradition. Caroline frowned. A feast for what? His eyes met hers. For the living and the dead, a reminder that we are neither. The great hall was magnificent. Gold and shadow danced together beneath the chandelier's glow. Guests filled the space, not humans, but other creatures bound to Ebonvale's curse. Vampires, spirits, shades in elegant disguise. Music played, slow, haunting, a melody of strings and whispers. Caroline moved like a ghost among them, her gown white against a sea of black. Eyes followed her, curious, envious, afraid. When Leon extended his hand to her, she hesitated, then took it. They danced, slowly at first, then faster, their movements blending like flame and smoke. Every step felt dangerous, electric. She could feel his power, his restraint, his longing, and beneath it, something older, sorrow. You've done this before, she murmured. He met her gaze. Once. What happened to her? Leon's smile was cold. She burned the castle down. The music swelled. A sudden gust of wind swept through the hall, snuffing out half the candles. A hush fell. The oldest guest, a pale woman draped in red silk, stood from her seat and raised her glass. To the new bride of Ebonvale, she said, her voice like velvet and venom. May she last longer than the others. Caroline's heart froze. The others. Her eyes darted to Leon's face, but he said nothing. Only a flicker of guilt betrayed him. The whispers returned, faint but clear this time. Run, before the moon turns again. The toast ended. The candles flared back to life. But something inside Caroline had shattered. That night, when the feast ended, she fled to her chamber. She pressed her hand to her throat, feeling the pulse that wasn't hers. The bond throbbed like a warning. Below, Leon stood in the hall alone, glass in hand, eyes on the moon. The prophecy echoed in his mind. The bride's heart will call the moon. He whispered to the shadows. It has already begun. Chapter 5. The Curse Renewed. The storm returned 2 nights later. Lightning tore the sky apart, and the castle groaned as if alive. Caroline couldn't sleep. The whispers had grown louder, now speaking in full sentences, calling her by name, showing her flashes of the past. Brides before her, faces that looked like hers, all ending in blood. She woke to find the sigil at her collarbone glowing brighter than ever. Pain shot through her veins. She collapsed, gasping. And in another part of the castle, Leon felt it. The bond flared. Her pain became his. He rushed through the halls, cloak whipping behind him. When he reached her chamber, she was on the floor, trembling. Her eyes glowed faintly silver. The mark on her skin pulsed with moonlight. "It's awakening," he said under his breath. "The curse is renewing." She looked at him through tears. "Make it stop, Leon. Please." He knelt beside her, his hand hovering over her heart. "If I break it, we both die. I don't care." He hesitated, his expression breaking for first time. "But I do." He carried her to the altar room, the same place their fates were sealed. The moonlight poured through the shattered windows, painting the floor in silver. Leon drew a circle of blood and salt. His voice took on a tone of old command, ancient words twisting the air. Caroline watched as the magic rose around them, shimmering like glass. The pain subsided, but the bond pulsed even stronger. Their hearts beat together. One rhythm, one curse. When it was done, Leon slumped, exhausted. Caroline knelt beside him. "You're weakening," she whispered. He looked at her, his face pale. "Every time I bind it, it takes from me. Soon, there'll be nothing left." Her eyes softened. "Then let it take me instead." He smiled faintly. "That's not how love works in Ebonvale." Chapter 6. The Blood Moon's Bond. The night of the blood moon came without warning. The sky burned red, and the air thickened with power. Caroline stood at her window, watching the moon bleed over the horizon. Her body felt lighter, stronger, as though every breath of air carried centuries of memory. She could feel Leon's heart again, racing now. He was fighting something. She followed the pull of the bond, through corridors, down staircases, until she reached the great crypt beneath the castle. The doors were wide open. Inside, the air pulsed like a living thing. Leon stood before an ancient coffin, his father's. The chains that sealed it were breaking. He turned to her, his voice dark and raw. "You shouldn't have come." She stepped closer. "The curse is breaking, isn't it?" "Yes, and with it, so am I." She saw the truth in his eyes. The curse wasn't just the castle's. It was his bloodline. Every Varcrest lord had been bound to the moon's will. And now, with her blood merged into his, the curse was unraveling. Through love, through defiance, through her. "What happens if it breaks?" she whispered. He smiled sadly. "Then I die free and you live cursed." The ground shook. The coffin burst open in a blaze of red light. The spirit of the old lord rose, eyes like fire. "You defied the blood oath, my son." It thundered. "You chose a mortal heart." Leon stood his ground. "I chose love." Caroline reached for him as power lashed the air, but he turned, meeting her gaze one last time. "When the moon fades, remember me." And then the light consumed him. The curse shattered. The castle walls groaned. The moon turned white again. When the light cleared, Caroline stood alone in the crypt. The chains were gone. The coffin was empty. Only the sigil on her skin glowed faintly, now shaped like a heart, pulsing softly. Leon's voice lingered in her mind, a whisper across eternity. "Love doesn't end with death, my bride." Outside, dawn broke for the first time in centuries. Ebonvale breathed sunlight. The curse was gone. But Caroline, standing at the balcony with tears and quiet resolve, knew she carried something eternal inside her. The bond had not vanished. It had transformed. And far away, in the wind, a whisper replied, "Until the next moon." Chapter 7. Echoes of the Dead. The dawn that followed was strange. Too bright. Too still. For centuries, Ebonvale had known only night. its skies painted in endless moonlight. But now sunlight poured over its towers, burning away the mist, revealing what had always been hidden. Caroline stood at the edge of the balcony, her hair glinting gold under the sun. Her body should have rejoiced, yet she felt hollow, as though the light had stolen something from her. When she looked down at her hands, the skin shimmered faintly, not in reflection, but in resistance. Her heart no longer beat the same way. The bond mark pulsed, not with heat, but with memory. She closed her eyes, whispering into wind, "Leon." The name felt sacred, forbidden, and then faintly the air moved. A chill brushed her neck. "You shouldn't call the dead by name," came a voice, soft as shadow. Caroline spun around, but no one stood there, only the faint shimmer of dust swirling in sunlight. The castle was alive again, but differently. Its whispers were gone, replaced by soft murmurs of wind through open windows. The curse had lifted, but the emptiness it left behind was unbearable. She wandered to the halls that had once frightened her, now bathed in gold. Without the darkness, they looked smaller, fragile, almost human. Every corner held a memory of him. Leon reading by candlelight, Leon's quiet laughter echoing down the stairwell, Leon standing at the altar beneath a blood moon. He was gone, yet she felt him everywhere. And then it began, the sound of footsteps when she walked, the flicker of shadows that weren't hers, the mirror that showed two reflections instead of one. That night, she dreamed again, or perhaps it wasn't a dream. The moon returned to her window, bright and full, and Leon stood within its light, dressed as he had been on the night of the feast. His eyes glowed faintly red, his voice low and melodic. "You called to me." Caroline reached out. "I thought you were gone." "I am, and yet you are still mine." The air thickened, vibrating with something alive. She stepped closer, tears shining in her eyes. "You said love doesn't end with death." "It doesn't," he whispered. "It changes form." When she awoke, the mark on her skin burned again, brighter, deeper. The moonlight outside was no longer white. It had begun to turn crimson once more. By dawn, the servants of Ebonvale, the silent shades bound at castle, began to stir again. The light that freed them was fading. Caroline understood then. The blood moon had not been destroyed. It had only been delayed. And the curse was not gone. It had simply chosen a new bearer. Chapter 8. The Scent of Blood and Memory. The following evening, Caroline awoke to a hunger she could not name. Her lips were dry, her body trembling. No food could satisfy it, no drink could soothe it. She found herself wandering to crypt, drawn by the faint scent of roses and blood. There in the moonlight, the coffin that once held Leon's father now stood empty. Vines crept through the cracks, glowing faintly red, and in the air that scent, metallic, sweet, irresistible. She pressed her palm against her chest, her heartbeat racing. If it could still be called that, a voice whispered through her mind. "Drink, my love. You cannot fight what you become." Her knees buckled. She gasped, clutching at the stone wall. "No, I'm still human." But even as she said it, her reflection shimmered on the coffin's lid, eyes faintly crimson, veins glowing beneath her skin. In the following days, she avoided the mirrors. She stayed near the chapel ruins, where the last traces of holy symbols still lingered. The sunlight there didn't burn her, not yet, but she felt it weaken her. At night, she dreamed of Leon more vividly than ever. He stood on a bridge made of moonlight, reaching for her, whispering her name. Each dream ended the same way, with her waking to find her lips stained with red. She had begun to feed, without knowing. The guilt haunted her. She found a wounded raven near the gardens one night and cradled it in her hands, trying to nurse it. But when the scent of its blood reached her, the bond pulsed violently. Her vision blurred. Her teeth ached. She remembered nothing after that, only waking with the raven gone, her lips warm and the taste of iron lingering on her tongue. Tears streamed down her face. What am I becoming? In the silence that followed, Leon's voice answered, carried by wind and memory. You are what I was, bound by the moon, cursed by love, saved by nothing. That night, She stood at the balcony again, staring at the moon now tinged with red. Her heart warred between longing and horror. "Leon," she whispered, "if you're truly here, tell me how to stop this." But the only answer was the sound of wings, hundreds of ravens taking flight from the castle towers, circling the crimson moon. And beneath their cries, the faintest whisper came again, like a promise. "You don't stop it. Caroline, you become it." Chapter 9, The Mirror of Blood. The nights in Ebonvale grew longer again. The sun's warmth faded faster with each passing day, until even the morning sky seemed hesitant to rise. The villagers below whispered that the curse had returned, but this time it wore the face of a queen. Caroline wandered through the castle halls in silence. Her reflection no longer matched her memory. The woman she saw now had eyes that glowed faintly red, lips too pale, and a stillness that frightened her. When she breathed, the air didn't fog. When she cried, her tears shimmered silver instead of salt. And when she looked into the mirror in her chamber, it looked back, not as glass, but as a window. One night, she stood before it, trembling. The mirror rippled like water, and the shape of Leon appeared faintly within. He was not as she remembered him, darker, fading at the edges, his expression carved from longing and sorrow. "Caroline," he whispered, voice echoing from far away. Her knees went weak. "Leon, is it truly you?" He nodded slowly. "Half of me, the part the moon could not take." Tears welled in her eyes. "Why do I see you now?" "Because the bond still lives," he said softly. "Because you still call to me." She pressed a hand to the mirror's cold surface. It pulsed faintly beneath her touch. For a moment, she swore she felt his warmth, the faintest heartbeat calling from the other side. Leon's voice softened. "You carry what I was. My strength, my curse, my heart." "I don't want the curse," she said, trembling. "I only wanted you." He smiled faintly, pain flickering across his eyes. "Then you have both." The mirror shimmered, his image fading, but his words lingered, a melody of sorrow echoing in the chamber. When the reflection cleared, Caroline saw her own eyes glowing crimson again. She touched her chest and felt it. A second heartbeat, faint but steady, pulsing beneath her skin. It was his. That night, the moon bled again, spilling red light across Ebonvale. In the crypt, the coffin that once held Leon's father cracked once more, and from its seams, tendrils of mist began to rise. The bloodline was awakening. Chapter 10, The Garden of Ashes. Ebonvale's gardens had always been dead, skeletal trees and gray roses frozen in eternal night. But under the blood moon's return, they began to stir. Caroline walked among them barefoot, feeling the soil breathe beneath her. The roses now bloomed crimson, petals gleaming like drops of blood. The scent was intoxicating, both beautiful and wrong. Each step she took left faint traces of silver light, her bond pulsing with every heartbeat. "Life from death," she whispered, "and death from love." In the center of the garden stood an old statue of a woman, draped in flowing robes, her eyes veiled. Caroline had passed it 100 times before without thought. But tonight, she noticed something new. The statue was bleeding. A thin trickle of red ran from its eyes to its marble lips. Caroline touched it, and visions rushed through her. Brides before her, each standing in the same place. Each cursed, each consumed. She stumbled back, gasping, "No, not again." A voice answered, not Leon's, but older, deeper, like the earth itself. "The moon chooses its vessel. You are not the first, but you may be the last." The air thickened. Power rippled through her veins. She could feel it, the weight of centuries pressing into her skin. That night, Caroline couldn't sleep. She dreamed of Leon again, but this time his voice was pained. "You must not let it control you," he said. "The moon's hunger is endless. If you surrender, you will become its queen and its prisoner." She reached for him. "Then what must I do?" "Find the heart of Ebonvale," he whispered. "It lies beneath the garden, sealed by the first bride. Only there can the curse be broken or renewed." When she awoke, her hands were covered in dust and soil. She had been digging in her sleep. The moon hung heavy above her window, and for the first time, she saw something hidden within it, a shadow in the shape of wings. Chapter 11. The Heart of Ebonvale. Caroline returned to the garden the next night, armed with only a lantern and Leon's memory burning in her chest. The roses parted as she walked, whispering softly in a language older than time. She reached the statue again, the veiled woman who bled tears of crimson, and knelt before it. Beneath the statue's feet, the soil was cracked, glowing faintly red. Caroline dug with her bare hands. The earth resisted her at first, then softened as though it recognized its queen. Hours passed, until her fingers struck stone. She brushed away the dirt to reveal a small chest, bound in chains and sealed with wax. The symbol upon it was the same as her mark. When she touched it, the air ignited. The chains broke, the wax melted, and a faint hum filled the air. Inside was a heart, not flesh, not metal, but crystal. It pulsed softly with red light, glowing like an ember. Caroline stared at it, her breath trembling. The heart of Ebonvale. As she lifted it, the garden came alive. Every rose burst into bloom. Every branch bent toward her. The sky turned black. The moon deepened to crimson. A voice thundered through her mind. "Do you accept your fate?" She fell to her knees. What fate? To reign, to feed, to burn. Leon's voice echoed faintly within her. "Caroline, don't." But it was too late. The crystal heart dissolved into her skin. Pain seared through her chest, fire and ice twining through her veins. She screamed as the moon's light poured into her, binding her to it. When the pain subsided, she rose slowly. The world felt clearer, sharper. She could hear the pulse of the earth, the whisper of stars. Her eyes glowed fully red now. The roses bowed in her presence. Ebonvale had chosen its new queen. Chapter 12. The Return of the Lord. That same night, as the moon reached its blood-red zenith, the crypt doors beneath the castle burst open. A cold wind howled through the halls, and the shadows deepened until they moved like water. From that darkness, a shape began to form. Leon. He stepped out from the mist, not as a ghost this time, but reborn, half shadow, half light, his eyes burning with power. The bond had resurrected him through her. He could feel her heartbeat, her pain, her strength, and she could feel him, alive, incomplete, bound to her forever. Caroline met him in the great hall. The moment their eyes locked, the castle trembled. The air around them shimmered with magic. "You came back," she whispered. "I was never gone," he replied. "You carried me with every breath." She stepped closer, trembling. "What am I now, Leon?" He smiled sadly. "You are what I made you and what you chose to become." The moon flared above them, red light pouring through the stained glass. Their shadows merged on the floor, one shape, one heartbeat. But the union was not peace. The curse was reborn through them both. The sky darkened again, the sun vanishing behind clouds of blood and ash. Ebonvale bowed before its new rulers, the bride and lord of shadows, bound by love, cursed by eternity. Caroline lifted her gaze to the crimson moon and whispered, "So this is forever." And Leon, standing beside her, answered softly, "Until the next dawn dares to rise." The moon pulsed, the castle sighed, and the story of mystery began its second life, not as a tragedy, but as an eternal vow. Chapter 13. The Blood Crown. The throne room of Ebonvale was no longer the marble sanctuary it once was. It pulsed. Veins of red light ran through the walls, and the air carried the faint scent of roses and iron. Caroline sat upon the crimson throne, a creation of bone and obsidian, carved from the ruins of her ancestors' tombs. Her crown, woven from thorns and gold, shimmered faintly, each point tipped with a droplet of blood. At her side stood Leon, silent and watchful. Together they ruled, but peace was not what followed. Mortals whispered that their queen no longer ate, that her eyes burned through darkness, that she could hear prayers whisper from miles away. In villages below, crops began to wither, animals refused to give milk, and the rivers ran dark during the blood moon. Fear spread faster than faith. Priests burned incense and cried out that the curse had awoken again. Witches gathered in the forest, summoning the wind, trying to seal the moon's power. But Ebonvale was no longer theirs. It belonged to Caroline, and the man death could not hold. One night, Leon found her staring out the window at the city below. "They fear you," he said softly. Caroline turned, her voice cold but sorrowful. "They fear what they made me." "You still have a choice," he murmured. She smiled faintly. "Do I? Or did fate choose for us long ago?" He looked away. He knew the truth. The bond they shared was both love and curse. And the longer they ruled, the stronger it grew. And somewhere deep in the castle, in a sealed vault beneath the crypt, something began to stir. Something older than Leon, older than the moon itself. The First Bride. Chapter 14. The First Bride's Curse. It began with whispers. Servants reported hearing a woman's voice at night, singing an ancient lullaby that made blood drip from the ears of those who listened too long. Caroline followed the sound one night, lantern in hand, down the endless staircase into the vault. The air was cold, ancient, breathing. At the end of the corridor, she found a coffin bound in chains, its surface covered in symbols she did not understand. The song came from within. "Who are you?" Caroline whispered. The coffin shuddered, and a faint voice replied, "I am what you became. I am the first to love the moon." The chains rattled, glowing red. Caroline stepped closer, drawn by a power that felt familiar, the same energy that lived within her. "Tell me your name," Caroline demanded. The voice sighed. "My name was forgotten when I became the first bride, but they once called me Lysandra." Caroline froze. "The Witch Queen?" Lysandra laughed softly, a sound like a blade cutting silk. "So they still tell my story. Then they also know how it ends, with fire, betrayal, and a lover who chose eternity over me." "Leon." Caroline stumbled back. "You love him too?" "I created him," the voice whispered. "And through you I will rise again." The chain snapped. The coffin began to open. Chapter 15. The Rebellion of Fire and Blood. By dawn, the sky over Ebonvale burned crimson. From the forest came the witches, their eyes glowing blue, chanting the ancient rites. From the villages came the mortals, carrying torches and holy relics. And from the castle rose black smoke, the sign of war. Caroline stood upon the balcony, her gown flowing like liquid night. Leon approached her, sword drawn, his expression torn between duty and despair. "They march against us," he said. "Your own people." "They march against what they don't understand," she replied. "Then let me protect you," he said, stepping closer. Her eyes glimmered red. "No, Leon, let me protect you." When the first torch touched the castle gates, the world trembled. Caroline lifted her hands, and the blood moon obeyed. Lightning of crimson fire shot across the sky, burning the earth where her enemies stood. Witches screamed, their spells dissolving. Mortals fell to their knees, blinded by her light. Leon watched, horrified and awed. "This power, Caroline, you're becoming." She turned to him, tears streaking her face. "Becoming what I was meant to be." Her wings unfurled, black and red like living shadow, and her voice became thunder. "I am the bride eternal. I am the moon's chosen, and I will not be undone." The battle became legend. Chapter 16. The Eternal Night Prophecy. When the fires finally died, Ebonvale was silent again. The mortals were gone, the witches scattered, and the castle stood untouched, a monument of victory and ruin. Caroline sat alone in the throne room, her eyes dim. Leon entered quietly, his cloak torn, his sword blood-stained. "It's over," he said. She shook her head. "No, it's just beginning." From the cracks in the ceiling, moonlight poured down in a single narrow beam, and within it an image appeared, a scroll of blood and light, written in the ancient tongue. Leon stepped forward. The prophecy, Caroline read it aloud, her voice trembling. "When the blood bride claims the heart, and the moon binds the soul reborn, the sun shall fade for 100 years. Only love's death can awaken the dawn." She looked up at him, her voice breaking. "It means one of us must die for the world to live." Leon's eyes darkened. "Then the world will sleep forever." He drew her close, their foreheads touching. The moonlight wrapped around them like a shroud. "Let them call it a curse," he whispered. "We'll call it forever." And as the blood moon swallowed the last light of dawn, the eternal night began. Would you like me to continue into part 4? The rise of the shadow heir, where a century later, their hidden child awakens, half light, half darkness, and becomes a key to ending or continuing the curse forever. Chapter 17, The Century of Silence. 100 years passed beneath the same moon. Ebonvale slept beneath eternal twilight, its towers veiled in black vines, its streets silent but for the whispers of ghosts. No bird sang, no dawn ever came. Only the moon reigned, crimson and eternal. The mortals who survived the war became pale shadows of themselves, hiding in the mountains, praying for light that never answered. The castle became legend, a haunted relic of gods and monsters. And deep within its heart, behind the throne room and beneath the sealed crypt, Caroline dreamed. She lay upon a marble bed surrounded by roses that never died. Her chest did not rise or fall, yet her skin glowed faintly, as though caught between life and death. Leon sat beside her, unchanged by time, his eyes hollow, his voice silenced by grief. He had kept the vow. The world would sleep forever. But fate had left him one secret. In the first years of their reign, when blood and love still mingled freely, Caroline had conceived a child, born of the moon and the mortal heart that still flickered within her. Leon had hidden the boy before the prophecy could claim him. Now, a century later, the child was grown and returning home. Far beyond Ebonvale, in the ruins of a monastery, a young man awakened from a dream. He had never seen the sun, yet his skin shimmered like dawn. His eyes, one gold, one crimson, glowed faintly in the dark. He whispered a name that came to him in sleep, Caroline. And somewhere in the castle, the roses around her began to bloom again. Chapter 18, The Shadow Heir. His name was Lucien Varcrest. He traveled by night, guided by dreams that were not his own. Each dream led him closer to the castle of his birth, the silent fortress where time itself bowed to the will of the moon. He knew nothing of his parents, only fragments, a woman's laughter echoing through marble halls, a man's shadow guarding her from unseen foes. But he felt them both inside him, the warmth of light, the hunger of night. As he entered Ebonvale, he found it unchanged, as though the world itself had forgotten the passing of years. Bats fluttered overhead. The rivers gleamed like veins of silver. The air shimmered with an ancient pulse. He walked the empty halls, feeling the whispers grow louder. When he reached the throne room, he saw her, a sleeping queen surrounded by thorns of moonlight. "Mother," he whispered. The sound broke the spell. Caroline's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly blue. She stared at him, disbelief and recognition battling within her. "You," she breathed. "You shouldn't exist." Lucien fell to his knees. "But I do." Leon appeared behind her, sword in hand, ready to strike, until he saw the boy's eyes. Gold and crimson, light and shadow. Their prophecy had taken form. Chapter 19, The Awakening of Blood and Light. For the first time in a century, dawn touched Ebonvale. A thin line of gold pierced the horizon, forcing the vampires to retreat into shadow. The eternal night cracked, not by magic, but by bloodline. Caroline watched in awe as the moon and sun hung together in the same sky, one bleeding into the other. The light did not burn her. The darkness did not claim Lucien. "You're the bridge," she whispered. The balance the prophecy spoke of. Leon, however, felt only dread. "If balance comes through him," he said, "then one of us must still fall." Lucien looked between them. "I don't want to destroy you. I came to end the curse." That night, the ghosts of the witches returned, summoned by the breaking of the old spell. They encircled the castle, chanting the ancient prophecy once more. "When blood bursts light and shadow yields flame, the world shall breathe, but hearts shall bleed again." Lucien took his mother's hand. "Let me be the sacrifice. Let the world live." But Caroline shook her head, tears bright as starlight. "No, my son, I won't lose what I gave eternity for. Leon stepped forward, blade trembling. Then I will end it. And as the blood moon began to fade, husband, wife, and son stood in the center of fate's cruel circle. Chapter 20, The Last Night of Ebonvale. The final night came like a storm of silence. The moon shone brighter than ever before, its light fracturing the sky. The castle trembled, the air thick with power and grief. Lucian stood between his parents, hands outstretched. Please stop fighting. You are both bound by love. Don't let it end in blood. But Leon's eyes were no longer his own. The old curse had awakened. Lysandra's shadow had found its way back through his heart. He raised his blade. Caroline stepped forward, unafraid. If it must be blood that frees us, let it be mine. Her voice broke the spell. Leon's sword fell from his hand as he caught her in his arms. No, he whispered. Not you. Never you. The moon shattered. Light and darkness poured together like water. The energy surged through Lucian, lifting him into the air. His voice echoed through the night. I am the heir of both dawn and dusk. I free you from love, from curse, from eternity. The castle cracked. The vines burned away. The sun rose over Ebonvale for the first time in 100 years. When the light faded, only roses remained. They say the mortals who found the ruins saw two figures turned to stone, a man and woman, holding each other beneath the throne. And between them, a single rose bloomed red and gold. Lucian vanished into legend, a wanderer between worlds, a reminder that love eternal always comes with a price. Chapter 21, The Wanderer Dawn. The sun rose for the first time in a century, but its warmth felt strange, fragile, trembling, as though the world itself was unsure how to begin again. Lucian walked the empty roads of Ebonvale barefoot, his cloak torn. Around him, ruins shimmered like mirrors of lost time. The castle that once held his parents had become stone, a monument to love and sorrow. He felt them still, not as ghosts, but as whispers inside his blood. Their love had not died. It had simply changed shape. As he journeyed east toward the mountains, he met the remnants of humankind, villagers with eyes wide in disbelief. They stared at the light as though it were a miracle. You brought the sun, they whispered. Lucian shook his head. No, my parents did. Everywhere he went, flowers grew where his feet touched the soil. Water turned clear again. The world began to breathe. Yet in every reflection, he saw shadows that didn't belong to him, eyes of crimson, lips whispering his name. Darkness had not ended. It had followed him. That night, under the first starlit sky of a new age, Lucian dreamt a voice calling through the void. My heir, my shadow. It wasn't his mother. It wasn't his father. It was someone else. Chapter 22, The Queen of Ashes. He followed the dream north, into the ruins of an old citadel, a place where time stood still and the air reeked of burnt roses. There he found her, a woman with hair white as snow and eyes like burning coal. She sat upon a throne of black glass, her hands dripping with silver blood. I've been waiting for you, she said. Lucian knew her name before she spoke it. Lysandra. The first bride smiled. So the moon bore fruit after all. Her voice was honey and venom, ancient and intoxicating. You freed the world, child. But balance demands more than freedom. It demands a ruler. I want no throne, Lucian replied. Every heir says that, she whispered, stepping closer, until the power in their veins burns too loud to ignore. Her touch was cold, yet when her hand brushed his cheek, memories of his father's rage and his mother's sorrow flooded through him. He saw how love could twist into eternal chains. I will not repeat their fate, he said, pulling away. Lysandra laughed softly. You already have. You came when I called. And with a single breath, the torches around them flared crimson, and the shadows of Leon and Caroline appeared within the flames. Chapter 23, The Echoes of Blood. Lucian fell to his knees. The vision of his parents burned before him. Two souls bound in flame, neither alive nor dead. Caroline's voice echoed softly. My son, you must end her. Only then will our love find peace. Leon's shadow stepped forward. But know this, every drop of her blood carries ours. To destroy her is to destroy what remains of us. Lucien's heart wavered. How can I choose between the past and the dawn? The shadows faded, leaving him alone with Lysandra. She approached him, eyes glowing faintly. You were born from my curse. You are the bridge between worlds. I gave your father eternity, your mother divinity. Through you, I will claim both. Lucien rose, power shimmering around him like threads of moonlight. Then you will claim nothing but silence. He struck, and the world shattered. Chapter 24, The Fall of the First Bride. The battle tore through the night like thunder made flesh. Lysandra's power bled into the sky, turning stars to ash. Her voice was a storm, her wrath unending. But Lucien stood unbroken, the son of the blood bride and the lord of shadows. Every strike was an echo of his lineage, every wound a promise of redemption. At the peak of the citadel, beneath the broken moon, he faced her one last time. She reached out, not to strike, but to touch his face. I could have made you a god, she whispered. Lucien's eyes shone, one gold, one crimson. I choose to be human. He drove his blade of light through her chest. Her scream was not a pain, but release. When the dawn came, Lysandra's body had turned to ash, and from it, a single seed of white light fell into Lucien's palm. He buried it beneath the ruins. From it grew a tree with crimson leaves and silver bark, the last remnant of the curse, and the first sign of renewal. Chapter 25, The Garden of Memory. Years passed. The world healed, slowly but surely. The forest returned, rivers sparkled, and children were born without fear of night. Lucien built a garden on a mountain's edge, where moonlight and sunlight touched the same soil. He named it the Garden of Memory. Each night, he spoke to the stars as if his parents could hear him. And sometimes, when the wind was still, he swore he could feel his mother's touch or hear his father's quiet laughter. He lived neither as king nor god, but as a guardian, the keeper of balance. Travelers came from across the lands to see him, to ask blessings, to tell tales of the Blood Queen and the Shadow Lord. And Lucien would smile softly. They were not monsters, he would say. They were in love. That was their only sin. Chapter 26, The Dawn of Shadows. One morning, long after mortals forgot his name, Lucien stood before the garden as the first true dawn broke. Sunlight pure and warm, not tinged by blood. He closed his eyes and felt peace for the first time. But as the light touched the tree of crimson leaves, a soft whisper rose from his roots. Two voices intertwined. Thank you, our son. Lucien smiled through tears. Rest now. The world is free. The wind carried the sound of laughter, familiar, eternal. And as the leaves fell, turning to gold in the light, Lucien walked into the horizon. Neither shadow nor flame, but something beautifully in between. The sun rose higher, brighter, cleansing the scars of the past. And for the first time in forever, the world of Ebonvale truly awoke. Thus ends the tale of the vampire's secret bride, not in darkness, but in dawn. For even in the deepest shadow, love remains a light that never dies.